Hammer the over, people. Hammer the over. That's what I'm here to tell you today. Maybe not hammer, but like strike the over. You know, I mean, you could take a hammer and just strike a nail instead of like actually hammering the nail. I would say strike the over. We have some Vegas projected win totals with K-State at 5.5. I do think this is a 7-win team within the margin of error, one way or the other. So 6 to 8, maybe I'd go 9 on the top end. 5 to 9 would be the widest range that I would go on this team. So if you're doing the math, that would tell you that by my prognostication and projection, you should certainly strike the over at 5.5. This is according to DraftKings. Okay, so they're no sponsor here. I'm not getting paid to tell you this, but if you did want to go strike the over and put your money where your mouth is, you would do it at DraftKings Sportsbook. Here's the rest of the Big 12. KU 1, Texas Tech 4.5, Baylor 5.5, K-State 5.5, West Virginia 6.5, TCU 7, Oklahoma State 7.5, Texas 8, Iowa State 9.5, Oklahoma 11. Here is the simple reason why I would tell you to strike borderline hammer the over here at 5.5. It's that last year, this team, which I think will largely be about the same this year, last year this team with a healthy quarterback was going to hit the over on 5.5 even in a 10-game schedule. Right? So we're talking about regular season wins here. These are regular season wins. I think K-State with Skylar Thompson, obviously they're going to finish off the Texas Tech game. They're going to beat TCU. You'd be 4-1 at that point. You still have the game against Baylor left. You've got Oklahoma State and West Virginia, which I think both become very winnable if Skylar is there and actually playing quarterback for you. I think there's a very good chance that that team still winds up 6-4 or 7-3 last year with Skylar as a healthy quarterback. Especially if you extrapolate it out like last year's team with a healthy QB and actually playing a normal non-con schedule, you definitely would have been in position to hit that over. If it were, I'm trying to remember what the original one was. It was Buffalo, Vandy, and North Dakota, I think, last year. So let's say they played that. Buffalo, Vandy, North Dakota. I mean, at worst, you're going 2-1 there. At worst, you're adding 2 extra non-conference wins. And even if you just pulled 2 of those random games and gave them the Arkansas State loss also, like we're talking about 2 more there, that team is easily like an 8-win team last year. Like I think last year's team, healthy, playing a full normal regular season and schedule, is about an 8-4 team, just like they were in 2019. So now we're taking that team, and yes, there are differences, absolutely. Lost Wyatt Hubert, that will be a big loss on the defensive line. The secondary is definitely missing some depth pieces right now. I think they're very good frontline players, but they don't have a lot of depth. The defense, to me, will take a step back this year. I think right now you'd say the defense will take a step back, but I also think the offense will take a step forward. So the offense takes a step forward, defense takes a step back. Assuming that your quarterback is healthy throughout the entirety of this year, I see no reason why this team isn't going to be much different from what I thought they would have been last year under circumstances that were at least close to ideal. So that, to me, is the simplest route to get to. Yeah, 5.5 seems like a pretty easy over for this team to hit. I still believe in Kleiman. I still believe in what we saw the first year, taking a team that did not have an NFL draft pick on it that first year in 2019 and winning 8 games, going 8-4 right away. I still believe in that more than I do losing your quarterback going through COVID last year and being 4-6. And still, had that team stayed healthy with a 10-game season, I think you're hitting this over at 5.5. Seems like pretty easy money to me if you are a K-State fan here.
John, after we get done with the show, I'm heading back to the office. I'm going to get on the DraftKings website, go to where these over-unders are. I'm going to print out the entire Big 12, what it looks like, the over-unders, and I'm going to add it to the preseason disrespect scrapbook that we've been putting together for maybe the last 10 years. Of
we have a scrapbook?
Just getting no respect. No respect at all. I mean, by God, we talk about it every single preseason. whole summer we could talk about the disrespect K-State gets every year because nobody likes the Cats. And really what it is DraftKings or whoever you want to mention with these over-unders or these preseason odds, you can argue that everybody kind of disrespects the Cats, at least what we think they could be every season. So this is nothing new. We were talking last week about K-State being, I can't remember exactly what it was because it just kind of blends together about how much the national books, betting odds, media outlets disrespect the Cats every year, the preseason polls. K-State's always the underdog. I appreciate K-State being the underdog because I'd rather be the underdog than be the favorite. But it's just, it's the same story, just a different chapter. And it just draws me in because if this was from Vegas, I'd be looking for flights to Vegas right now because it'd be like, I'm putting some money on the Cats, be on the over at 5.5. Absolutely, I would. But this is DraftKings. Can't do it in Kansas.
Well, okay, I don't know the legality. I was going to say, couldn't you just do it anyway? It's DraftKings. I don't know.
You're not supposed to bet on sports in Kansas.
Okay.
They might keep you from doing it. They might only allow you to bet in the states that it's legal.
All right, well, go find a good VPN and figure it out. I don't know. I don't take it that much as disrespect. I mean, if we are being honest and realistic, they were 4-6 last year. It's not like there are major glaring changes to somebody who's not like a fan that's following this team on a daily basis that you'd look at and be like, well, that's an overwhelming positive. They're absolutely going to get better next year. I can understand how you'd look at this and say, yeah, I mean, that's about where they'd be. I mean, West Virginia was better than you last year. They're at 6.5 wins. Their coach has beaten you twice, has the 2 head-to-heads. We've already talked about this with Neil Brown and what he's done. He's recruiting better. I mean, if you look at K-State right now from an outsider's perspective, you would be like, well, last year they won 4 games. They have not done anything that blows my socks off on the recruiting trail. If I'm looking at recruiting rankings, why would I believe in this team being much better? I think for us, we have been closer to Chris Kleiman and understand, we think, that he is a good coach and that he is somebody that, much like Bill Snyder, can do more with less. But he hasn't really earned that sort of trust on a national level. Like, I think these types of things were more disrespectful when it was Bill Snyder who was the head coach, because he had proven year in and year out that he's going to do more than what you think he is, and it should be worth some added value there. Now, also, I mean, the other thing to consider here, too, is, like, sports books have different motives than just, like, trying to be right. They're not trying to be right. They're trying to make money. So they want action on both sides. They want a lot of action on both sides, and their number is going to be set accordingly. But that kind of comes back to, like, how these can be a reflection of what people think nationally of the team. And I think if nationally everybody looked at the team and the program right now and said, like 5.5 would make it most difficult for me to decide which way I'm going with my money on that, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world right now. They weren't far off from being like a 6-6 program by the time Bill Snyder left this thing in 2018. You know, I mean, it's been like a 7-5 program ever since Cullen Klein's career ended. So 7-5, now this at 5.5 with the over-under, you're looking at 5-7, 6-6, and it's coming off of a year that was particularly down last year because of some extenuating circumstances, but that was particularly down last year. I just don't look at that and be like, man, pitchforks, this is absolute outrage and disrespect. Like, I can say I would hit the over here. I do think that's an easy way to make some cash, but I don't take this as disrespectful as some of what we've seen in the past, which you know that there are numerous examples of that date back to Snyder 1.0.
I'm not saying DraftKings is like being disrespectful on purpose. They're like, oh, K-State fans are used to people thinking they're underachievers, so we're going to set the line pretty low and everybody's going to be throwing a fit. All I'm saying is it kind of continues that trend of where these projections come out, and it's always a lower number than what in our hearts we expect K-State to be that upcoming season. That narrative just doesn't change. It doesn't matter who's putting out those numbers, but I'm totally with you. I'm hammering the over as well because apparently DraftKings didn't realize Skylar 316 is back, and so is the second best running back in the country in Deuce Vaughn.
I guess I would just say most fan bases probably feel that way too, that their team is always perennially underrated when it comes to these sorts of things, like the over-under win totals to start a season, unless you are obviously like Oklahoma. But even beyond that, if you're a Texas, if you're like Auburn, I'm trying to think of schools that have been kind of in that category, USC, that have been underachieving for the last decade or so, and every year everyone wants to buy into them. I mean, USC and Texas stand out very strongly to me on that front. It's like Texas, 8 wins this year. I guess. But that feels largely based on reputation. I don't know what the hell to think of their head coach. I don't know what to think of their quarterback situation. I mean, Ellinger has been like the one thing that steadied that ship and kept them from being Charlie Strong era 2.0 under Tom Herman. So I digress. I think there are a lot of schools that are in the same situation as K-State. I don't take it as some major sign of disrespect. I don't think it is some major sign of disrespect, but I do think that this team is going to outperform what these expectations are. I truly do.